I'm very excited to be back with you today, and this webinar is especially near and dear to my heart because it gives you a chance to get a sneak peek at our upcoming Train Signal course on iPads in the enterprise. Now, I've been working hard on this course, and the entire team at Train Signal is excited to get it out to you, so look for it coming soon. Now, with that, I'm going to jump right into our content here. And I want to start out by taking a moment to discuss bring your own device. We're going to go over a couple topics related to it, also some with policies, and then we're going to spend the bulk of our time actually on an iPad going through some live demonstrations. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. The first thing to discuss with BYOD is to back up, to jump way up in the air and take a look down at the entire issue or concept. And really what it boils down to is the whole goal behind BYOD in an enterprise is to protect your assets, your organization's infrastructure, while simultaneously allowing your users to have the best experience possible with their own technology. In short, it allows your users to connect when they want, where they want, how they want, with what they want. A lot of individuals throughout my travels I run into believe that, you know, they don't have BYOD, they're not going to have BYOD, and that's the end of the story. Unfortunately, the data shows us that they're probably wrong. In the current era, most users have a much higher degree of tech savviness than ever before. They know how to do things with their device, and because of this, they're able to slide their device onto the network with or without permission. And they believe that they're justified in doing so because they believe that doing so empowers them to do their job more efficiently or add value to the organization. It is so pervasive that of the people asked by Forrester, 37% admitted to doing this before they had permission or a policy was in place. Think about that for a second. That's 37% that admitted to it. The number is probably actually higher because there's a bunch of people that said, heck no, I'm not admitting to that. Get myself in trouble. What are you, crazy? So, you know, what I want you to take away from this is that it's probably not a good idea to bury our heads in the sand and pretend the issue doesn't happen. It's best to probably get our hands around the issue. So even if we don't want to have formal bring your own device implementations, that's fine. We just need to lay that down and structure how we're going to prevent that and communicate that with our users. At the end of the day, what I like to think of mobility implementations as is security. That's what they all boil down to. You can talk about apps, you can talk about functionality, you can talk about, you know, design, but the end-all issue seems to always come down to security. So when you frame it that way, you know, I want to give you 3 little pointers here. First off, what you really don't want is to have your data end up in hands that you don't want it in. And that becomes complicated with mobility because your data is now out walking around. You've had remote access for a while and things like that, but you've never really had your data out beating the streets. Well, now it is. So you have to take steps that allow you to secure that and make that experience meet the demands of your organization. Of course, the cloud complicates things. And what I mean by complicate is that with the cloud, we have other licensing concerns. We have other storage concerns. We have a lot of different concerns that we really didn't have to address when we just had infrastructure in-house. And finally, when we're talking BYOD, it's important to note that we're not just talking about the organization's data and resources anymore. You know, the personal data that belongs to the users is as important to them as our corporate data is to us. So we need to keep their data theirs. Now, all that being said, I have some keys to success, if you will, just a few pointers to go over and talk about that I think will help you along the way. First off, know what you can support. And possibly even more important, know what you can't support. I call this the Wild West syndrome. Your job is to be Wyatt Earp. You bring order to the chaos. If you do not define what you can support and what you can't, both in terms of hardware and software, you will find yourself in, the Wild West with everybody shooting off guns and rolling around, and you don't want that. So lay down, this is what we're going to do. Along with that increased tech savviness of your users, realize that they want to be able to do things for themselves. They want self-service. So unless you have a very specific reason not to, strive to give it to them. Data use. This is I call the current round of advertisement when it comes to cellular broadband and such almost an oxymoron, right? All the ads are telling us, hey, we have faster speeds, greater bandwidth, you can stream your video, you can download massive files. Yes, you can. But unfortunately, at the same time, a lot of these providers are moving towards capped data plans. They're no longer unlimited. So you're going to pay dearly for the privilege. Well, in a BYOD scenario, you probably need to understand what is data that is being used for your organization and what is data that is not being used for your organization. You'll do this through proper data use management. What it all boils down to is that the user does not want to pay for, the large file that they downloaded from the company's servers, and the company does not want to pay for the streaming Hulu Plus video that the employee's daughter was watching last night. So keep that separate, understand what is being used, what is available, and make that aware to everyone, both user and internally. Beyond that, we get into the broader scope of MDM, or mobile device management, or even MAM, or MAM, mobile application management. We're in IT, right? We love acronyms. I swear that there are people in IT that probably go to college to some bachelor of acronym or something. But in the end, what I'm really should be focusing on here is the concept of managing your devices, because you really can't manage what you can't measure. And MDM is your tool for measuring what's going on with your mobility deployments. Even the smallest 5 or 6 unit implementations can benefit from MDM. And there are a number of solutions available to you that aren't high priced and very complicated. Apple Configurator is a great one that is completely free from Apple and very straightforward to use. So we'll move right in from those high-level talks about BYOD into policies. And what I mean by policies in this context are the documents and control criteria that you define as an organization before you ever put in your first device. What these policies do is they really communicate upfront to everyone what is to be expected, how the experience is going to go down. And I call this, my teenager analogy. Would you ever give the teenager in your house the keys to your car before you set down some ground rules for how they're supposed to use that car? Now, I don't know every teenager out there, but in my personal experience, I am, pretty explicit about communicating, this is where you go, this is where you come back, this is what I expect you to do, all those things. And it's the same rule with your mobile devices. Make sure that all your teenagers in your organization know how they're allowed to use a device and how they're not, including what security measures are needed, what precautions they have to take, such as, if you use a mobile device on our organization's network, you have to have a security policy. You have to use a VPN with a certain level of encryption, so on and so forth. An important, often overlooked feature of policies are the clear definition of what happens when you don't comply. And that could be as simple as, your device is disconnected from our network, to your device is remotely wiped, or you lose access privileges. Whatever works for your organization, you need to decide that up front and lay it out and make it clear. That way no one is surprised at what happens. It's really just a boom, 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 cause and effect type relationship. But I often, when I mention that, am faced with this question of, hey, yeah, but how do we do that? We're IT, and the user's going to come and they're going to argue this and they're going to argue that. Well, first off, these policies affect your entire organization. They affect users in marketing and executives. They affect plant workers, students, whatever your organization is, they affect all your users. So don't create these policies in an IT vacuum and inside the IT department. Get outside the box and involve your human resources department, your legal department, your operational department heads or representatives. So if you're deploying mobile devices to engineering, involve your engineering managers in deciding, hey, this is how it's going to be used and how it's not going to be used, and what's going to happen. Because when you do that, not only do you get policies that are more in line with your organization, you also remove yourself from the argument that happens later on with the user of, hey, well, I needed to do this because of this. You're simply going to turn them back over to HR or to their manager and say, hey, this is what we decided on, and this is what happened, and this was the result, so please discuss this with your teammate, with your user. It gives you a lot more flexibility in how you run your implementation. Beyond that, keep in mind that if anybody ever tries to sell you on, they will provide you the perfect BYOD or perfect mobility policy, they're crazy. Every organization is different. Every environment is different. Therefore, every policy needs to be slightly different. This doesn't mean that you can't start with templates and frameworks. It just means that you need to take the time to sit down and understand what works for your enterprise and what doesn't. And to do that, you literally have to not be afraid to ask tough questions and implement those answers. Literally, leave no rock unturned. So when I recommend policies to organizations, I always recommend what I call the big three, which are the acceptable use policy, the reimbursement policy, and the supported device list or supported device policy. Now, these don't have to be three separate policies. They can be one policy all wrapped together. The important thing is that the content that needs to be in those three policies is put down in place day one before you ever order or deploy your first iPad. The AUP, or the acceptable use policy, they call this the prenup of mobility. It quite clearly defines what are and what are not acceptable uses for technology in your organization. And it doesn't matter whether that technology is user provided or corporate provided. It's important to lay down for all of those scenarios. You have to cover those security requirements in detail in the AUP. As I mentioned, we're going to lay out, do we require VPNs? Do we require heavy encryption? Do we require passcode policies or all that? You're going to lay that out right in the acceptable use policy so everyone knows it right up front. If your organization is in the medical industry, or you're a publicly held company, or any one of the many organization types that are regulated through federal law or state or local law, it's important that you understand what the regulations are in those requirements, or what the requirements are in those regulations, sorry, and you implement those in your mobility policies. For instance, HIPAA, PCI DSS, SARBOX, the HITECH Act, they all have very specific security obligations laid out in them. And you are not exempt just because the device is mobile. You have to make sure that your mobile security complies with those regulations. This means you may need to restrict features such as camera access, app store access, even internet browsing from your device, which luckily through mobile device management, you can do all those things. In a nutshell, know what your organization's legal and regulatory compliance obligations are, and at the end of the day, compliance first, flexibility next. It just has to be that way. Details matter. Finally, in your AUP, address how personal data will be kept separate. As I mentioned, that personal data is as sacred to your users as your corporate data is to you, and it should be treated as such. Everything that isn't controlled by technology should be covered by policy, and even some things that are controlled by technology should be covered by policy. Include both your current supported technology as well as future tech as best you can. Obviously, we don't have crystal balls and can see the future, but we do have ideas of, what will be coming in the near future and the midterm. Technology evolves very rapidly, so it's important that your policies try and exist in that environment. Make sure your users understand that with this new mobility deployment, with these iPads that you're giving them, that they have a business responsibility to, do a number of things. This is, well, I'll put it up there and see if any of you recognize this quote. With great power comes great responsibility. It's very true and applicable right here. I personally recommend that once you have your AUP, that all your users sign it before you hand them their device. That way, there's no ambiguity, there's no misunderstanding, or at least you've done your best to avoid it. Finally, remote wipe. If mobility is all about security, then the remote wipe capability is the foundation of that security. The ability for you to go out and snatch back that data of yours that's walking around. There's a number of reasons you might do that. It might be because the device is lost or stolen. It might be because the user leaves the company. It could be for any number of reasons, but you need to clearly define how you're going to handle that. This becomes even more important in a BYOD environment because your policy, your tools may not allow you to do what's called a corporate wipe or selective wipe, where you're only removing your data. Your tools, say for instance, if you're using Exchange 2010, may only allow you to do a full wipe on the device. Now, you may have MDM solutions that are in place like ZenPrize or AirWatch that allow you to do a selective wipe. You may have Exchange 2013, which brings that capability to you. Whatever it is you're going to do, understand it up front and make sure your users understand it, because wiping a device is a very sensitive matter. So before we take a peek at the app slides here, I would like to show you a couple things. First off, this is a sample policy that we developed as part of the course, and you can see it's multiple pages, but it lays out all the things that we've talked about. It talks about how they have to use authentication and strong encryption measures, all those things. And at the very end, you'll see that it's signed by the employee and IT and HR. Now, This, again, won't be a perfect policy for all users, but it gives you an idea of what an AUP should look like. Get back into our slides here and talk for a moment about apps, because this is where the power of the iPad is brought to bear. You know, the iPad has a number of great features, and we could talk about all of them, and they all add value. But at the end of the day, if it weren't for the apps, the iPad would be like so many tablet computers over the last 10 years. A fad, a unique idea that never really takes off. Why has the iPad redefined the tablet computing experience? Because of the apps. The breadth of offering is amazing. So when it comes down to finding the apps that will add value to your deployment, to your specific organization, there are some things I can suggest that will help you do that. And first off, you need to sit down before you ever go looking for apps and identify what is it you're trying to accomplish. Are you trying to share files? Are you trying to move files on your network? Are you trying to, edit Office documents? Whatever it is, you need to sit down and just, a one sentence, this is my goal. Then you browse the App Store or, the internet, you do your research and find a handful of apps that you think might fit the bill. Then you do what you always do. You test the theory, and if it works, you deploy the app. If it doesn't work, you move on. Now, unfortunately, with the iPad, there isn't a whole lot of trial options available to you, but luckily, most apps are very inexpensive. They're, 99 cents or under $5, certainly. So based on your research, it's a small investment to invest once and test them out. Now, when you get into deployment, you may be buying them through the Apple Volume Purchase Program for Business or for education, and you're buying hundreds of these licenses and deploying them to your iPads. Well, at that point, the cost is more significant, and that's why it's so important to make sure that they meet your need before you go down that route. The other thing I will mention is that many apps are deployed in two versions. So there's a free version that you'll find in the App Store, and then you can either go in and buy the second version, which is deployed separately, or you can do an in-app purchase to upgrade the app. It does give you a little more flexibility in your testing areas. So that's it for slides. Now, let's see what we have going on here on our actual iPad. So I am going to take a moment and start streaming my iPad feed to my computer. And to do that, I'm going to tell my computer to accept the stream. And there we go. Everyone should be seeing my iPad, complete with all my apps, some work-related, some not. I wish I could justify Monopoly as work-related, but I don't think we're going to go there. Now, one of the first functions that we have to address in an iPad when it's put in an enterprise environment versus a consumer environment is file management, because this device is now going to be used on your network. It probably needs to connect to shared storage on your network or other resources to pull files in, to view them, to edit them, or whatnot. And the built-in file management capabilities in the iPad are, let's just say, less than stellar. So one of the apps that I found that works great to fill this need is File Browser EX. And I'll go ahead and fire that up here. And File Browser EX, it's a paid app. I think it runs about $5, but it allows me to bring the Windows Explorer or Mac Finder type experience to my iPad. So these are files that are on my iPad that you're seeing right now. But if I move back one layer, you can see that I have also a number of remote resources. One of the things that I do like about File Browser EX is it allows me not only to connect to SMB shares on my network or network attached storage, that kind of thing, but it also allows me to connect to cloud-based storage services such as my Dropbox or my SkyDrive. It does not in the current iteration support Google Drive, but I expect that to be coming. So what I will do is I'll show you, I'll tap my SkyDrive and we'll hum the Jeopardy theme song here, although I'm not really a great hummer. But in a moment, you'll see that there's my SkyDrive. If I pull up the folder, you can see I just drill into different subfolders until I find a file. This happens to be the Global Mantix logo. So I'll go ahead and tap the arrow and I get a number of options. There's, of course, an open in option. What it will do for open in is it will actually pull the file and then match it up to the type of apps that it can open in. So you can see I can open it in my actual Dropbox app. I can open it in Print Central Pro, which is one of the apps that I use for managing printing from my iPad. I can even open it in CloudOn, and I'm going to get into CloudOn in a moment. I can also slide. If you notice at the bottom that we have the 2 dots, that means I have multiple apps, so I can slide and I see another page with other apps that are available. Alternatively, I can just tap the app and File Browser EX will open it in its own viewer if it's supported. So that just gives you an idea of how you can manage files on an iPad similar to how you manage them on your computer, because that will be important to your users. They're taking this thing and now it's not a toy any longer or a consumer device. It's meant to allow them to do their jobs or enhance how they do their jobs. So they're going to need to be able to do the things that they're used to doing. Let's pop out of File Browser EX. And because we're talking about file management, let's swing over and pop into one of my cloud-based storage services. We're now in Google Drive, and you can see that I have no documents. So what I want to do is go ahead and we'll create a new document. We'll just call it a great webinar. Create. It, of course, will open up and I can type text in it, whatever I want to do. Done, close. It's now in my Google Drive. You'll see it on my PC. It's already arrived at my PC. Google Drive, of course, uses and supports Google Docs, so that's why it has a GDoc extension. But also back on my iPad, if I pop back into File Browser, head back over. Of course, I use Google Drive, so it isn't in here. I don't know what I was thinking, but had I done the same experience in my SkyDrive, it would have appeared right here in File Browser. Sorry for that, got ahead of myself. The key is that you can use these services, if your organization supports them, to allow your users to share their data quickly and seamlessly between their iPad, between their computer, between work. And a great feature of many of the current cloud storage services is that they allow simultaneous editing. So multiple users can edit a document, for instance, on SkyDrive using Office 2013, and it will It won't do the old, oh, well, John's editing this, so Dana can't edit this. It will allow us both to edit it and incorporate the changes. It's an evolution of the collaboration experience. Now, let's talk about some other common thread uses for apps that you're probably going to run into. You're going to, of course, need the basics that everybody uses an iPad for, such as web surfing and email. And for those, you have multiple apps. You have Safari that comes with iOS, but you also have other browsers available to you, such as Chrome or Atomic, even the Puffin browser. I have Chrome on here somewhere. Now, this is a great chance for me to show you a feature of the iPad that your users will find handy, and that's Spotlight. I, of course, have tons of folders and tons of apps, and I can't remember where I put a certain app, in this case, the Chrome app. If I swipe left to right, I bring up the Spotlight search on my iPad. I just start typing Chrome, and you'll see that it finds the app for me, but also to the right of the app, it shows me what folder I put it in. I put it in my IT stuff folder. I'm just going to go ahead and tap it. The app, of course, will open, and there's Chrome. So I can browse the internet just like I normally would. This is just a normal everyday feature that I'm sure you're all familiar with and that your users will take advantage of every day. Oh, somebody just threw in a question on what is Air Server. Air Server is a great little app. I appreciate that question because it means that at least you're hanging with me. So Air Server is a great little app that lets me stream via AirPlay content from any AirPlay-enabled device to my PC. So I can use it on my PC, I can use it on my Mac, but it's a great tool that allows me to show you my iPad on my PC screen, but at the same time still keep my PC screen visible so that you can see other things I'm doing. For instance, let's move, Air Server over here and say that I want to, pull up that Google Drive folder again. Well, I can take advantage of Windows Snap, and there is the two side by side. So this is a great opportunity for you to be able to keep track of or show things that are happening side by side. It's a very, very inexpensive app, and there is a demo out. So if this is something that you might need to be doing, which in an enterprise, if you're in the IT department for your enterprise, you may want to look at this because one of the big hurdles that you're going to jump is how to train your users, how to communicate to them that, hey, this is the functionality that we're going to provide to you above and beyond the consumer type functionality of your iPad, and here's how to use it. Well, you may do that by creating your own little training videos, and this is a great way to do that. You can see that the document I created on my PC is now on the Google Drive app of my iPad. Okay, so that's a quick little plug on Air Server there since we were asked. Now, we talked about web surfing as a common app. Of course, there's email, so you also have Gmail apps as well as the built-in mail apps. Video conferencing, right? We're using GoToWebinar for this webinar. Well, we can also use GoToMeeting or FaceTime, Skype, even Fring to do video conferencing or remote teleconferencing, if you will, for meetings for our organization. In fact, I'm betting that a number of you listening to this webinar right now may be doing it through the GoToMeeting app in or on your iPad. And you'll notice that I have the app right there on my iPad. So that's a tool that you can use to answer that need. We have editing documents. Many of you probably use Microsoft Office. I'm betting most of you use Microsoft Office. Well, there are no native Microsoft Office apps for the iPad. There is, of course, the iWork suite from Apple, which contains Keynote for presentations, pages for your documents, numbers for your Excel spreadsheets, but they're still doing conversion. They can open your Word created documents, but they're going to do conversion. For instance, let's go back to one of my multitude of services here. I think in my SkyDrive I have a documenting global mantics. No, I do not. So I will show you how we'll actually take this PowerPoint deck, the deck we just went through, and I will save it right to my SkyDrive. There. It's now in my SkyDrive. Let's go back into that app. Sing the little Jeopardy song here. Come on. Well, while we're waiting on that, I do have another question about, does Chrome or any other browser play websites that use Adobe Flash? And your answer is yes, with an asterisk. And what I mean by that is that Puffin, for instance, which is a free web browser app for the iPad, will play Flash by rendering the content on their servers and then streaming it to you. So it is less than the stellar experience that you're used to. And the reason for this is because regardless of what the apps claim, remember that iOS very publicly, threw their fist down and said, we will not support mobile Flash. We never will support Flash. It was a tenet that was held dear to the late Steve Jobs' heart, that it was flawed. And they basically won much of that argument, in that Adobe, of course, has stopped developing the mobile Flash experience. But we all know that many of the websites that we access are Flash-based. We need that functionality. So you can get it by using the experience through Puffin, for instance, or using a virtualization experience, which is a great segue as there we continue to wait on our PowerPoint app. So hold that thought. I want to show you very quickly how, if I open this PowerPoint presentation in Keynote, there it is. So there's my Keynote screen. Notice what it's doing. It's importing because it isn't native. And what you're seeing right now is something that I almost always see when I'm bringing in a Word document into the iWork suite. Now, I'm a big fan of the iWork suite. I use it a lot. But if your content is being created in Microsoft Office and edited in iWork, there are some hitches to the experience. This is one of them. So let me show you how you get around that. And this goes to that same conversation we just started that I put you on hold of virtualization. A number of apps are being built now that take advantage of the cloud and of virtualization in the cloud. And one of those apps is an app called CloudOn, which is currently free. And I believe I have it in my IT stuff too. What CloudOn does is provide you a virtualized version of Microsoft Office. It streams it down to you. So you will notice that in CloudOn, you have, and I'm going to go ahead and create a brand new Excel document. Sample. Say new. Notice that it's tied to my Google Drive, but I could tie it to my SkyDrive or my Dropbox, which I have, and I'll show you that in a moment. But when it opens, what I want you to notice is, what's it look like? It looks like Office, doesn't it? Because it is Office. It's being virtualized and streamed to you. It is not an Office app on the iPad. You have your ribbon bar. You have the ability to, type in a cell and change the font style, to do formulas, all the things that you're used to in Excel, because it is Excel. Now, what CloudOn will do is it disables functions that don't make sense on the iPad, such as the file menu. You see it up there, but I'm trying to tap it right now, and you notice I'm not getting anything. The reason for that is that saving and save as don't really apply. The way that we deal with that is if I type in the document, you'll notice up in the upper left corner, it automatically saves every change that I make. So let's go ahead and close that, and I'll pull my Google Drive up on my computer here. There's our document that we just created with CloudOn. Of course, I do need to open the right document. Come on, some of you are making fun of me right now. I can feel it. That's all right. I deserve it. So there's my changes. There's my document. All set. It's a pretty cool way to get the Office experience in native Office format. So you can do Word, you can do PowerPoint, you can do Excel, sorry. So I'm going to go home because I want to go into my SkyDrive. Oh, I haven't linked my SkyDrive. I'll show you that I can go into my Dropbox, and you can see that I already have a PowerPoint in my Dropbox just for this purpose of showing you how it opens in CloudOn. And of course, at least once a webinar, something has to give me an error. So I'll tap it again. Do 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 do. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, well, since it's going to decide to be a pain, I can't show you that it opens a native format PowerPoint, but you can try that on your own and verify my statements. Now, we are getting within 15 minutes of the end of our destination, so if any of you have questions, please fire them over. I will start getting into them in just a couple moments. The one last thing I wanted to show you is along the lines of that same virtualization for if you really need to get into heavy Flash content as well as line of business apps, and you don't want to get into developing an iOS application. You can get around that, of course, by virtualizing desktops and making them available through your private infrastructure, or also through a service such as Desktone, which hosts Windows 7 or Windows 2008 server, whatever type of desktop you're interested in, right up in the cloud. Then you simply use an app such as VMware View, connect to that hosted desktop, and VMware View, I'm using PC over IP, and yes, because of Apple's infinite wisdom. You can see the password I typed in, but this is just a test scenario, so unfortunately, you're not going to unlock the secrets of my life using that password. Not that any of you would want to do such a thing. But what's happening now is my iPad is connecting to my virtualized Windows 7 desktop. And of course, I have a problem going on here because of the install, but you can see what I wanted you to see, which is it is Windows 7. It has full Office. It has Adobe Reader. You can join it to an Active Directory domain. You can do all those things that you need to do. There's my mouse cursor moving around, right? And I can open Adobe Reader. It is Windows, and it is running from my iPad, not on the window. And the cool part about this is you can use this same desktop. You can access it from your iPad. You could access it from your iPhone if you have really good eyes and small fingers. You can access it from your PC at work. You can access it from your PC at home. So it's just a concept to put in your mind and think about how you can deliver value to your customers, your employees. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect here from that. And with that, I'm going to peek into some of the questions here. There was a question asking about the ability for single sign-on. And the iOS, really, it's not specific to iPad, but iOS does store identities in an encrypted keychain. And depending on what you're using, what you're doing, you could be getting into a browser, you could be getting into a specific app or whatever. There is opportunities for single sign-on if you set them up properly. Fortunately, that's framed by your exact configuration, so I can't tell you exactly how to do it for your environment, other than that you do have options available. So please just bear with me as I go. We have a comment about the browser Rover for Flash access. Absolutely. You can give that a try. Again, remember though, it cannot render content locally because the iOS operating system is designed to quash that. So it is having to do some sort of emulation, some sort of processing on the back end. It's just inherent to the OS. You can't fit a square peg in a round hole, unless of course the round hole is bigger than the square peg. So I have a question about mobile device management, and unfortunately, that is a whole a whole section on its own. In fact, there is a complete lesson just on mobile device management in the course because it's a wider area. But what I can do is I can give you a example of what you would do from an enterprise. Many of you probably rely on Microsoft Exchange. So, lo and behold, I am RDP'd into one of my Exchange servers. It's the black screen you're seeing. It's just being very laggy here for whatever reason. So I'm going to make it of course it's not wanting to connect. So we're going to let that do its thing in the background there and see if it can reconnect while I answer another question here. I see a question about how will it work for direct connection from iPad. If you could just give me a little clarification, what do you mean by it? So this is the Exchange server. Let me maximize it here for you so you can really see what's going on. I'm going to go ahead and open up my Exchange Management Console. Of course, you can do all this right from the shell also. If I drive down in, get into recipient configuration and mailbox, and I go ahead and pick my mailbox, and this is Exchange 2010. If I right-click it, you'll see I get this Manage Mobile Phone. I also have it over here in my Actions list. Either one will bring up the Manage Mobile Phone wizard, which gives me the ability to do a couple things that are important to mobile device management. Remember I mentioned that foundational function of remote wipe? That's why I chose this to show you. And you can do it right here by just clicking this Perform a Remote Wipe to clear mobile phone data, and then clicking Remove. Once you click it, again, it's being laggy. You have to confirm it. And when you confirm it, it will issue a remote wipe. You can see I've done that already once to this device that's listed. So you see when I sent it, when it was acknowledged by the device, meaning the device has already wiped itself. So beyond that, you can, in Exchange 2010, you can create other Exchange active sync policies. Again, I don't have time to go through that right now, where you can control things like requiring encryption, requiring a passcode. Can it wipe a device out of perimeter? I'm not sure what you mean by perimeter, but it will wipe a device, any device that is connected via Exchange Active Sync in this scenario. As soon as the device connects to a network and tries to sync Exchange, Exchange will send the command down, the device will acknowledge receipt of the command, and then immediately wipe. It doesn't prompt the user, it doesn't give them the opportunity to cancel it, it doesn't do anything. So if the device is powered off, for instance, it's not going to wipe until it powers on. If it's disconnected from any network, it's not going to wipe until it connects to a network. And that's pretty much the same for any way that you're going to perform that task through any mobile device solution. Is there a Microsoft Remote Desktop client for the iPad? Absolutely. Let me pull up my iPad here. And I will mention, because I'm getting a lot of great questions, if you have questions that I don't get to, okay, please follow me on Twitter, hit me up on Twitter, send me an email. I will do my best to send you back a personal response, a personal answer to your question. So I need to restream my iPad here. Okay, so perimeter out of company, that's what you mean. So yes, again, it doesn't matter whether they're, inside the company connecting to the company's wireless LAN or at Starbucks connecting to their Wi-Fi. As soon as they connect and try and execute Exchange Active Sync, it will get the command and roll with it. The same concept applies to most of the mobile device management solutions that you use. They will connect over the internet, receive the command, and perform the instruction after acknowledging it. So here's my iPad again, and you'll notice my favorite RDP app is Pocket Cloud. Pocket Cloud is from Weiss, of course now owned by Dell. They're on a buying spree. And what it does is it allows me to connect via RDP to any of my remote desktops. Of course, in this case, it's wanting to be ugly about it, but that's probably because I'm using a lot of network bandwidth, broadcasting over the network and such. You can see under my connection settings all the settings that you're used to for RDP. Now, the difference between Pocket Cloud Pro and the free version, because there is a free version, is just how many computers I can save. See, I have a lot of computers I can save. For instance, here's that Desktown virtual cloud-hosted desktop. I believe I still have it configured in here, so we'll go ahead and connect to it. what is the best way to accomplish a remote desktop session to a MS remote desktop server? Pocket Cloud. That's, I can't say enough about it. It works. And the free version just will not allow you to save more than one connection. Okay, so of course that one doesn't want to work. It's just trying to embarrass me at the moment. I've determined that computers love to do that. Yeah, so you get the gist. And you can simply add a user by coming in here. You can select PC over IP, so it will support the VMware View connections, or RDP. There you go. You just define it, and away you go. I'll say yes. Grab me one or two more questions here. Off-the-hip ideas for communication, IM style, between Windows desktops, iOS, Android, etc., in the enterprise environment. You have a number of apps that are available to you. Remember I mentioned Fring for video conferencing? There are a number of similar type apps. I may have some on here. I see Fing. There are a number of IM style apps that allow you to do that, so that you can have users participating, especially very effectively in, IM style conversations where it's just popping up very rapidly in that kind of environment. I have a question about the best combination to connect an iPad to the LAN, and I'm not exactly sure the scope of that question, but of course the iPad has to connect via wireless infrastructure. So just a tip, if you're going to deploy 100 iPads into your sales department, please go make sure that your wireless infrastructure in your sales department is ready to handle 100 new devices flooding it, okay? Because I've seen more than one enterprise, run into an emergency situation because they've saturated their wireless infrastructure. But beyond that, you can incorporate it into the LAN infrastructure, for instance, for file sharing. If you don't want to use those cloud-based services, you can use just your regular network shares and access them through apps such as File Browser, or there's a number of other apps, even a free app, I believe, that just came out that's called Remote App that's very similar. So there's a number of things. Again, please hit me up. I'm sorry if I did not get to your question. I just simply have run out of time. It's 2 o'clock. I really appreciate everyone joining us today. I hope that you've at least picked up 1 or 2 ideas that you can go mull around for how to enhance your iPad experience. And I look forward to seeing you in my next Train Signal webinar or during my next Train Signal course. Until then, have a very happy holiday season and enjoy the time with your family.